Pharaoh's eyes close on the desert dune, sees a shadow in the midday moon, a great timber beast on the horizon's line, a whispered secret from a forgotten time, a dream of bronze and sand, a phantom vessel in a Pharaoh's land, a phantom vessel in a Pharaoh's land.
The real Trojan wood horse story. Knowing the chronicle written by Eusebius, it is clear that Macedonian Alexander, the Great and, most probably, his mother, Olympias, changed the Trojan timeline a little bit to make their ancestry a little bit older. The famous horse story of the Scandinavian Edda took place in Cadiz, or rather, Megiddo, between the famous Hittite army and the Egyptian pharaoh, the dreamer, Thutmose III, who was made the pharaoh by the Sphinx itself. The battle took place in Canaan in reality. As it is written in a Hungarian adventure novel by our popular writer, Leslie L. Lawrence, quoted. Here is the translation of the provided text. She came in through the door, and she has an imagination, doesn't she? She can conjure up fantasies just like I did. In any case, I never heard from her again. So that means... It means she was killed. You can imagine the reason she didn't look up Concini later. That short-statured little scoundrel was bombing Cairo newspapers with ads even years later. He went silent and looked at me expectantly. Then, he cast a furtive glance at the monitor. Perhaps he was checking my heart rate, or maybe my alcohol level. What's the story with this Amin Mhaib? He threw his head back in surprise. I thought he had told you everything. I'm forgetful, I said. Things slip my mind easily. Nothing special. About 2 months ago, he notified me that this mummy had appeared on the horizon. He tried to get on my good side because of certain financial transactions. Or at least, that's what he claimed. In this party, I'm the mastermind, I provide the dough. He just collects his cut. Who was this guy? Didn't Concini tell you? Concini isn't interested in mummies. Mr. Lendvay, I don't want to give you an Egyptology lecture, but you should know that during the so-called New Kingdom, about 1500 years before our era, Pharaoh Thutmose III ruled Egypt. Thutmose III waged war against Mesopotamia, or as it was called then, the Mitanni Empire. A bodyguard officer named Amin Mhaib also participated in this campaign, and he later described the events of the campaign in considerable detail on his relief. He describes, for example, that before the Battle of Kadesh, the Prince of Kadesh released a mare among the stallions pulling the Egyptian war chariots. You can imagine what would have happened if, instead of an Egyptian victory, the stallions had been more interested in the mare. Amin Mhaib immediately recognized the danger. Risking his life, he went after the lady horse and killed it. The pharaoh decorated him for it, too. As a reward, he received a lion statue made of pure gold, 2 necklaces, 2 rings, and 2 fly-shaped medals. Furthermore, Amin Mhaib once saved the pharaoh's life. Thutmose III was hunting elephants when a massive bull elephant attacked him. The reckless bodyguard jumped in front of his ruler and cut off the animal's trunk with a single stroke of his sword. What do you say to that? He couldn't have been a mama's boy. Certainly not. Unfortunately, Amin Mhaib's tomb has not been found to this day. Only his inscription. Did you easily believe that the mummy offered by Concini was Amin Mhaib's? I was forced to. Why, pray tell. Concini's agent handed over a metal plate. This was allegedly lifted from the mummy's wrappings. The hieroglyphs engraved on the metal plate clearly indicated that the mummy was Amin Mhaib's. Isn't it possible it's a forgery? Of course it is. But let Concini worry about that. He'll learn that I can't be made a fool of just like that. Peterson stood up and pointed to a door made of black wood hidden among the sarcophagi. Come, Mr. Lendvay. I took hold of my glass, careful not to spill the yellow liquid onto the floor. Peterson stood before the door and said something to an invisible censor. The door swung open, and I raised my glass and took a swallow while walking through. Then, once again, I felt like pondering whether I was asleep, whether I was drunk, or if the images of reality were swirling before me in a wild jumble. In the middle of the medium-sized, snow-white walled room, lying on an operating table equipped with every luxury, was a mummy wrapped in a chaotic manner, frozen in the characteristic pose of mummies. You've surely been wondering why I invited you to my pyramid and why I negotiated with you, Mr. Lendvay? Indeed, Mr. Peterson. I've been racking my brain over that for a good while. You can stop now. I had two goals with it. One is for you to see what happens here in the operating room in the coming minutes, so you can report it to Consini. You'll find out the second one later. I took a few sips and set down the empty glass. Honestly, that second thing was what I feared the most. 12. The human figures of indeterminate gender and age, wearing black silk masks, could have been ancient Egyptians. There were 5 of them, roughly the same height, and equally bulky. Just like American football players or wrestlers. The 2 huge glass circles on the black silk mask were for seeing, and the notched third one was for speech. Peterson bowed and cleared his throat. Greetings to you all. Do you know your numbers? 5 nods. Okay. The task is as follows. Here lies a mummy before you. My request is that you perform the appropriate examinations on it. Number 4, describe the results of the scan. The white-clad, masked figure labeled number 4 stepped to the wall opposite and pressed several buttons invisible to the rest of us. With a soft swish, a white projection screen descended onto the wall, and I didn't even have enough time to coax the last few drops out of my glass when his voice spoke up. Or, to be more precise, a toneless machine voice distorted beyond recognition. I will show you images, which I took of the alleged mummy lying on the table. May I have the first one? The first image encompassed the entire wrapped body. The rays pierced through the wrappings, through the dead skin and bone. The dark lines of the bones separated sharply from the strips of the wrappings. The monotonous voice of number 4 recalled the indifferent tone of a railway announcer. The person wrapped in the bandages is, without a doubt, female. Her age can be estimated between 18 and 30 years old. Based on the skull structure, she is Europid, a strongly Nordic type. The image jumped, showing the skull close up. Even at a first, superficial glance, it can be established that the person lying in the wrappings was shot in the back of the head. Everyone shifted uneasily. Number 1 seemed to make an attempt to take off his mask. Pedersen's gaze, however, stopped his movement. The bullet left the skull and can be found here. Probably, and when the third image appeared, he pointed to the ribcage area of the skeleton. In her chest? Asked a machine voice. It's possible, nodded number 3. Why not? It's also possible, said number 4, that what you see here, and he pointed to another dark dot, is another bullet. Unfortunately, due to the mummification, the entry and exit wounds have disappeared. However, the skull's entry wound clearly suggests that the victim was killed with a firearm. Or the bullets were shot into her later. The machines wheezed and gurgled. For the moment, no one wanted to speak. Finally, number 1 took the courage and grunted. Tell me, Mr. Peterson. What in the hell do you want from us? Even a blind man can see that we have no business here. This mummy is as Egyptian as I am, or as you are. In your place, I would report to the police that instead of a mummy, I was sold a victim of a common murder. Peterson jumped up and began to gesture nervously. I'll decide what I do. Your job is to carry out my instructions. Did you understand? Number 1 nodded and shut his wheezing trap. The others stood motionless, as if they had been paralyzed by Pedersen's angry words. Number 4. The X-rays clearly prove that number 1 is right. We are dealing with a common crime. The mummified individual was killed with rifle or pistol shots. Although, it appears as if her throat had also been slit. The masked ones stood shuffling with their heads down, amazement wasn't visible on them. And yet, it was there in the air, swirling around us, and slowly settled upon our chests. We even hunched under it, as if they had strapped backpacks full of lead onto us. "Is there anything in the wrappings, besides the metal plate?" asked Peterson. Number 4 pointed to 2 black spots. "Here and here. One is presumably a scarab beetle, the other, I don't know what." "Perhaps another bullet," said one of them. "By no means," protested number 4, "it's much larger than that." I stood at the wall with Peterson at my side, and I desperately realized that I had become perfectly sober in the last few minutes. As if I hadn't had a single drop to drink. Under the influence of the sudden sobriety that struck me, I began to shiver, and I thought, I wish I could be in my bed, preferably alone. I wish that towering Consini had never entered my office, and I wish I had never heard of this mummy girl who was shot in the head. It also crossed my mind whether this profession was right for me at all. Wouldn't it be better to wait on readers' requests in a pleasantly heated, clean, finely mechanized library, and from time to time, work the girls working in the archives among the bookshelves? Number 4 suddenly turned to me. "What is your profession?" I saw no point in denying my trade. "I'm a private eye." He nodded and said nothing more. And I began to ponder more and more seriously about picking up my tent and clearing off to the devil. I felt like it was all a waste of steam. I hadn't been a fan of mummies until now, and I wouldn't start liking them now. 13. Peterson, however, had no intention of letting me go. Quite the contrary. He grabbed my shoulder and shoved me firmly into a chair. "You just stay here. Do you want another drink?" It was as if I hadn't even heard my own voice in return. "I don't want any." He looked at me in surprise, then turned to the others. "Thank you." So the situation is clear. The thing visible in front of us is the mummy of a murdered woman. Since she was killed with a firearm, I don't think it could be more than a few hundred years old. As I looked at the bullet outlined in the middle of her chest, I could have said that it couldn't have happened more than 20 or 30 years ago. But I didn't say anything. "Begin," gestured Peterson. Number 4 and 5 began their work. The other 3 stood closely behind them and watched the scene over their shoulders. I remained in the chair and tried to fight against the sickness overcoming me. Perhaps the smell of the liquid flowing toward me from the disinfectant trays was the culprit for my upset stomach. "Ready? Ready. I'm cutting through the top layer of the wrapping. Tweezers. Scissors. Scalpel." It was as if they were operating on a real patient. "Colleague?" I have to laugh. If it weren't sacrilegious, I would. The way a Cairo camel driver imagines wrapping bandages. Astonishingly primitive. Maybe he learned it from a book? "Cut further, colleague. Attention, the second layer follows." Damn it, they glued it with something. "Tear it carefully, lest you..." Damn it, didn't I tell you? "You try it then." "Okay, let's keep going." Third layer. Quality of the bandage? "Wait a little bit, God bless you. If you cut my finger." Quality of the bandage? At first glance, it's original. Actually, even at second glance. Peterson lifted his head in disbelief. "Original?" One of the Egyptologists, perhaps number 3, spread his arms. "That doesn't mean anything, Mr. Peterson. Bandages in good condition are recovered by the thousands from the time of the Ptolemies or even later. Perhaps from the Christian era." Fourth layer. "Watch out, that thing is here. Come here, Mr. Peterson." Not only did Peterson go there, but so did I seconds later. I realized it was a mistake. I should have stayed sitting in the corner instead. What I saw only confirmed my resolve never, in all my blessed life, to participate in a mummy autopsy again. Except if they were autopsying my own. From among the cut-up bandages and quite foul-smelling rags, a light blue scarab beetle, the symbol of eternal life, appeared. Number 4 deftly reached for it with tweezers and lifted it into the air. The blue beetle clinked against a tray, as if it were just a fairy tale kidney stone. That of a man who drank ink instead of whiskey his whole life. Colleagues? The Egyptologists leaned over the beetle. It looks authentic. How can you tell? Peterson asked nervously. By nothing. You should know that it is extremely difficult to determine the age of a scarab. Only after a thorough examination of the stone and the polishing technique. To the devil with it, continue your work. 5th layer. Move your finger. What is this? A single pair of tweezers was no longer enough to lift the next object. 2 of them held it, one of them held one end, the other held the other. Peterson's eyes clouded over, and with a trembling hand, he wiped his forehead. Why? My eyes clouded over, too. My voice would have trembled as well, if I had been able to speak at all. For between the tweezers swung a 6.35 Browning baby pistol, with slight red rust spots on its barrel. 14. From the novel, Nebet, Het. Now it is clear that the horse was the Hurrian, Hittite horse which was called Loki, is Nt it.